Run it again, please.
The clerk ran it again. Ma'am, it isn't declining. Somebody is holding it. Nora Vasco looked at the screen through the glass. It was turned away from her. Holding it. Who holds a dead man's card? The clerk did not answer. She had already put her hand flat over the phone. 11 minutes later, 3 black SUVs came up the ambulance ramp. They stopped where the ambulances stop. Nobody moved them. The old man who got out of the middle one was worth more than the hospital. He went past the security desk. He went past the chairs and a nurse who put a hand out and then took it back. He stopped in front of a 23-year-old girl in a coat 3 sizes too big. Then he said her father's name. Before we go on, if this is your first time here, hit subscribe and turn the notifications on. By the end of this one, you are going to want the next one. Now, let's go back to the start of that week. What happened in Renwick that spring did not just decide who a girl belonged to. It decided which bill finally got paid. Renwick sits in the flat part of Ohio, an hour south of the lake. It used to make ball bearings. By that spring, it made almost nothing. And the biggest employer in the county was the hospital. Renwick County General had 4 floors and a helipad it could not afford. Everybody in town had been born there or would die there. The billing office was on 3 in the back, where there were no windows. Nora had worked nights in that office since she was 19. She was good at it. That surprised people because she looked like she ought to be somewhere else. She had come in as a temp and never left. All night, she read what happened to people after the ambulance left. A man who beat sepsis and lost his truck. A woman on a payment plan of $40 a month with 11 years to go. Nora did not look at the amounts first. She looked at the timestamps. That was the part nobody taught her. Every account had a spine of times running down the side of it, and the times told you who had pushed which button and in what order. An amount could be argued with. A timestamp could not. There were 4 people in the office at night. Nora was the only one with a write-off key. It was a permission on her login. It let her do one thing nobody else on nights could do. She could take an account the hospital had given up on and open it again. Her supervisor had shown her how in her 2nd year. You will use it about twice, ever. But if a family comes back with money after we've written them off, somebody has to be able to put it where it belongs. And that's me. On nights, that's you. Nora had used it once for a man who wanted to pay off his wife's account before he moved to Arizona. It took 9 minutes. He cried in the parking lot. She kept one paper in her wallet that was not a card. It was a photocopy of her own birth certificate, folded in 4 along lines that had gone soft. Renwick County General, March 11th, 2003, 5:40 in the morning. Mother, Marguerite Vasco. Father, Peter Vasco. On the back was a rubber stamp in blue ink. Unable to pay charity. Nobody stamps a birth certificate. The hospital had stamped the billing copy, and the billing copy was the one her father had kept. And so that was the one she had. She had stopped being ashamed of it around 19. She had never stopped carrying it. Home was 11 minutes away, a 1-story house on Alden Street, with a ramp somebody had built badly. Loretta Meade had lived in it 40 years. Nora had lived in it 22. Loretta was 68 and had a knee that had been finished for 3 winters. She wore a navy wrist warmer she had knitted herself, and she wore it in July. That morning she was standing at the stove because sitting hurt worse. "You're home early." "Same time as always." "You're home early, and you're standing funny." "What is it?" Nora put the mail on the counter and did not put anything else down. "The surgical center wants the deposit up front. $6,300. Then we don't do it." Loretta set a plate in the rack without turning around. "I have walked on this leg since you were in high school, and I'll walk on it a while yet." You get up 4 times in the night. I hear you. Loretta wiped the same spot twice. You hear the house settling. The house doesn't hold on to the counter. Loretta turned the burner down. She did that when she wanted the room quieter. $6,300 is not a thing we have. I know what we have. I do it for a living. Then you know. I know exactly, Nora said. That's different. Nora's father had died 6 weeks earlier, on a Tuesday, in the cab of a county plow truck. His heart. He was 50. He had gone out at 4 to open the road to the water plant. They found him at 6, engine running, blade down. Pete Vasco had driven that plow 11 winters. Before that, he framed houses. Before that, he had done something in an office, a long time ago. He did not talk about it. And after a while, nobody asked. He raised Nora in Loretta's house. Loretta had taken them both in when Nora was 4 days old, and it had never been undone. The county gave Nora a plastic bag from the truck and a cardboard box from his room. She had not opened the box. It sat by the couch for 6 weeks with the flaps folded over each other, which is not taped and is not open either. On the Thursday of that week, she opened it. The coat was on top. Camel wool, heavy, 40 years old and mended twice at the elbow. She had seen him wear it to 2 funerals and 1 parent conference. Under the coat, there was a shoebox, and in the shoebox, there were the things a man keeps that are worth nothing. A watch that stopped. 3 keys to nothing. A photograph of a young woman with black curls, tied back in a rust-colored scarf, and an envelope with Nora's name on it in her father's handwriting. And inside the envelope, 1 card. It was black. Not printed black, machined black, with the weight of something that was never meant to be in a pocket. There was no logo she recognized. There was a line of numbers, and there was a name. Peter Ardley. Nora sat on the floor with it for a long time. Her father's name was Peter Vasco. Vasco was her mother's name. She had known that since she was small, the way you know a thing without being told it twice. And she had understood it as a nice thing a man does when he loves a woman. Loretta. Come look at this. Loretta came in from the kitchen with a dish towel. She looked at the card in Nora's hand for about 4 seconds. She did not ask what it was. She did not ask whose name that was. She said, "Put your coat on. It's cold in here." Then she went back to the kitchen and ran the water for longer than the dish needed. Nora turned the card over. On the back, in pen, in the same handwriting as the envelope, were 6 words. Only if there is nothing left. She waited 3 days before she used it. She told herself she was waiting to find out what it was. What she was doing was waiting to find out whether Loretta would say anything. And Loretta said nothing at all, which was its own kind of answer. On Monday, the surgical center called about the deposit for the 3rd time. There is a rule in a billing office. You do not run your own money through your own terminal, and you do not run it for anybody who lives in your house. You go downstairs and you stand in line like a person off the street. So Nora went downstairs on her day off, in her father's coat, and took a number. Window 2. Account? Mead, Loretta. It's a surgical deposit, not a balance. 6,300 even. How are we paying? Nora put the black card on the counter and slid it under the glass. The clerk was young and bored, and had the card halfway to the reader before she looked at it. Then she looked at it. "Is this yours?" It was my father's. The clerk turned it over and looked at the name on the front. "Is he with you today?" "He died in January." "I'm sorry." She said it the way people at counters say it, which is not nothing. I still have to run it as an authorized user, or it'll kick. Run it however it goes. It did not kick. The reader took 4 seconds, which is 3 seconds too many. And then it made a sound Nora had heard maybe twice in 4 years. Not the flat tone for a decline. A double tone, low, like a phone in another room. The screen turned itself around in the clerk's hands, and Nora, who had read 10,000 of those screens, saw the line before the clerk did. Hold contact issuer. Do not return card. Run it again. Please. The clerk ran it again. Ma'am, it isn't declining. Somebody is holding it. Holding it. Who holds a dead man's card? The clerk did not answer. She had already put her hand flat over the phone. She was reading a second line under the first, and her mouth had gone small. I need my supervisor. Can you step to the side? I work here. I know who you are. Can you step to the side? The supervisor came out of the back with her badge on backwards. She looked at the screen for 2 seconds. Then she picked up the desk phone and dialed a number. She did not have to look up, and she turned away from the glass while it rang, which supervisors do not do. Behind Nora, the number board clicked over. 51. 52. It was 10:41 in the morning. At 10:52, 3 black SUVs came up the ambulance ramp and stopped where the ambulances stop. 2 men in gray suits held the doors open, not for each other. The old man who came through them was tall and had been taller. White hair, dark brows, a gray cashmere scarf. He had not taken off in a building in 20 years. The lobby did what lobbies do. It went quiet in a ring that spread out from him. He did not look at the supervisor. He did not look at the desk. He looked at the girl in the too big coat and kept looking while he walked. By the time he stopped, his face was the face of a man reading something in a language he used to speak. Where did you get it? Not who are you? Not what is your name? It was in my father's things. Where did you get it? His name was Pete Vasco, Nora said. He drove a plow for the county. He died on the 21st of January, and this was in a box with his watch. The old man's hand came up and stopped in the air between them. You have his hands. I'm sorry, sir. Who are you? My name is Roland Ardley. The supervisor made a small noise behind the glass. Half the lobby knew the name off a hospital wing, and the other half knew it off a plant that closed. That card has been open for 24 years, he said. It has never been used. Not once. It was used 11 minutes ago. Yes. Sir, it's a $6,000 surgical deposit for a woman with a bad knee. Rowan Ardley looked at the counter and at the black card, lying on it under the clerk's flat hand, and something in his face came apart very slowly, the way ice does. 24 years, he said. I have waited at that number for 24 years. Waited for what? For my son to be hungry enough to use it. He was crying by then, in a lobby, in front of 80 people on plastic chairs. He never was, Roland said. Not once. And now, he isn't anything. 11 minutes away, on Alden Street, Loretta Meade was standing at the mantel, with her cane hooked over her arm. There was a picture frame on that mantel that had lain face down since before Nora could walk. Twice a year, Loretta had turned it over, looked, and put it back. She turned it over now and stood it up on its little hinge. A man in a denim work shirt with the sleeves rolled twice. A woman with black curls and a rust-colored scarf. Between them, half out of frame, a third man with his hand on the first man's shoulder. Older, plain, laughing at something outside the picture. That was Ezra. That was her husband. Loretta had known who Nora was on the 4th day of Nora's life. She had known what the name Ardley meant before that. She sat down in the chair by the window with her hands in her lap and waited for the phone to ring. The house on Wickham Ridge had a gate with no sign on it. Nora had passed that gate her whole life on the way to the reservoir. She had never once wondered what was behind it. Behind it were 11,000 square feet. The front hall had a floor you could see the ceiling in. A woman was waiting at the top of the steps. She was 62 and looked like money that had been careful. Silver hair up, a plum silk scarf, knotted at the throat, hands folded in front of her. The way people fold them at a viewing. Roland, you might have called. Camilla. This is Nora. Yes. She came down 2 steps and stopped, and she looked at Nora from the boots up, and she took the time to do it. What a remarkable morning. Come in off the step, dear. You're letting the heat out. The hall was the coldest room Nora had ever stood in. You'll want to leave those there. My boots? The mat is for that. Marta will bring you something. Nora did not move off the marble. I'll keep them on. They're wet. They're mine. Camilla smiled with the lower half of her face. Of course they are. And the coat? It has an odor, dear. I don't say it to wound you. Something like a car heater. Have it laundered before it touches the upholstery. Roland was 3 steps behind them and did not hear it. Or heard it, and did not have anything ready. Nora put her hands in the coat pockets and left them there. It's my father's. Then it has been through a great deal. It smells like diesel, Nora said. He ran a plow. That's what a plow smells like. I'm sure that's true. You can tell the difference between a man who worked and a man who didn't at about 4 feet. That's all that is. There was a pause, of the sort that gets into the walls. Camilla turned and started down the hall and spoke without turning around. Roland, the girl will want to wash. And you will want to call Dean before the hospital calls a newspaper. Later, Nora would be able to say exactly when the day changed. And it was not the SUVs. And it was not the crying old man. It was a housekeeper coming up the hall with a folded plastic bag, held out at arm's length. For the coat, at Mrs. Ardley's instruction, and the way she would not meet Nora's eyes while she did it. Nora took the bag. She said thank you. She folded it and put it in her pocket, and kept the coat on for 6 hours in a warm house. That night, she wrote 3 lines in the Notes app on her phone. The way she wrote up an account she did not believe. 1041. Not a decline. A hold. He asked where I got it before he asked my name. 24 years is a long time to wait for a phone that rings on the first try. Dean Frayne came out from Cleveland the next morning with 2 lawyers and a folder. He was 55, shaved head, rimless glasses, a charcoal suit that fit the way suits fit when somebody comes to the office to do it. He ran the Ardley Group. He was Camilla's younger brother. He shook Nora's hand with both of his. I want to say first that this is a wonderful thing. Truly. Thank you. And I want to say second that wonderful things move fast. I would like to slow this one down about 10%. For your sake more than ours. He opened the folder on the library table and turned it toward her. That's a family settlement. It's ordinary. Everybody at this table has signed one. Nora read the first page the way she read accounts, which is to say, from the bottom. $2 million. A confidentiality clause. A non-contact clause, 3 years, covering Roland Ardley, his residence, his offices, and any person employed by the trust, and a line waiving any claim against the estate, present or future, known or unknown. So I take the money and I go away. You take the money and you get a life. Nobody is going away from anybody. Nora turned to the second page. It says non-contact. It says a great deal of things. That's what makes it ordinary. She did not sign it. She said she would like to read it at home, and Dean said, of course, twice. By Thursday, there was a story. It ran in a business feed and was everywhere by dinner. An Ardley heir? A hospital clerk? A dead man's card? And a $6,000 charge. The story did not say she was lying. It did not have to. It used the word surfaced. It said she had presented a card belonging to a deceased individual. It said she had done it where she worked. Two people at work stopped talking when she came in on Thursday night. One of them was somebody she had covered a shift for in December. That was the same evening Camilla and Dean stood at the far end of the library, with the doors open, which is how Nora heard it from the stairs. He wants to put her in the will this month. He wants a great many things this month. Cam, 24 years. Not one of those alerts ever landed on his desk. Not one. Ice moved in a glass. And it stayed that way because I am careful and because you are lucky. It's the same account. It is a closed account with nothing in it. There is nothing on that card to find, or he would have found it in 2003. There was the sound of a decanter. Then let her have the girl's version of it, Camilla said. Let her be an heiress in a diesel coat for 6 weeks. It will do more than we could. Nora stood on the stairs in the dark with her hand on the rail. She had heard 4 things in that hallway, and only understood one of them at the time. It was the smallest one. It was the year. The surgical center called Loretta on Friday at 9 in the morning. They were very sorry. The procedure scheduled for the 11th had been pulled for a benefits review. Her coverage had been flagged for a coordination question. Nothing was denied. Nothing was canceled. It was under review. Nora knew what that sentence was. She had typed that sentence. She called the plan at 10. She got a person at 11:40. It says here a third party notified us of a possible other liable payer. Which third party? It doesn't give me a name. It gives me a date. Nora closed her eyes. Then read me the date. Wednesday. Wednesday was the day the story ran. She sat in the stairwell on 3 with the phone against her forehead for a while. Then she went home and did not say any of it. And Loretta looked at her once and did not ask. On Saturday, Loretta went down in the kitchen. It was not dramatic. The knee simply was not there, and she went sideways into the counter and then onto the linoleum. And she sat with her back against the dishwasher and laughed, because that is what she did. Don't you dare call anybody. I'm calling somebody. Nora Vasco. Nora crouched down with the phone still in her hand. You're on the floor. I have been on this floor before. It is a very good floor. Nora got down and sat beside her, with her back against the same dishwasher. And they stayed like that, with the refrigerator running. They pulled it because of me, Nora said. Somebody made a phone call because of me. Then that is on them. It's on me. I'm what changed. Loretta put her hand over Nora's hand, and her hand had that navy wrist warmer on it, and it was the warmest thing in the house. Listen to me. You did not bring a card into that lobby. You brought a knee. Now, before we go on, if you are still with me, do me one small thing. Tell me in the comments what time it is where you are. I like knowing who is out there in the dark. All right, back to that kitchen floor. Nora sat there until the light changed. Then she got up, and she got the folder Dean Frayne had left. And she read all 9 pages of it at the kitchen table with a pen in her hand. She was 23 years old, and she had never had a claim on anything in her life. At 11 at night, she called the number on Dean's card and got him on the second ring, which told her he had been waiting for it. I'll sign. Nora. That's a good decision. That is a genuinely good decision. Monday. At the bank, not the house. Whatever you like. And I want one line added. There was the shortest pause on the line, and then the sound of a man reaching for a pen and being pleased about it. Of course you do, Dean said. Everybody wants one line. Tell me the line. The bank in Renwick had a records room in the back, with a woman in it named Adele Sturm. She was 55, dark green cardigan, reading glasses on a chain, and she had worked in records for 29 years. She did not care who anybody was. She cared what the regulations said. Nora had gone to see her on Sunday afternoon, alone, before she called anyone. I want the transaction history on a card account. All of it, from the day it opened. Are you the card holder? The card holder is dead. Adele did not write anything down. Are you the estate? I'm his daughter. That is not the same thing, Adele said. A full history on a closed account goes to the estate. It does not go to relatives, and it does not go to heirs. And if you are contesting anything at all, you are a claimant. And a claimant gets it through a lawyer in about 14 months. And if I'm not contesting anything, Adele took her glasses off. If you sign away every claim you have, then you are not a claimant. You are a member of the public, and the public gets nothing at all. Unless the estate asks for it and hands it to you. The estate can hand a copy to anybody it likes. It's their paper. Nora sat with that for a moment. One more thing. What comes with a full history? Whatever is in the file that explains the file. Card agreement, authorized users, and any standing instruction on the account, because a standing instruction is why some of those lines look the way they do. We don't send dispositions without the reason for them. People call and yell. Nora wrote that down on the back of her hand. That's a rule. That's the rule. On Monday morning, they signed in a conference room over the branch, and there were 6 people at the table, and only 3 of them mattered. Dean read the added clause out loud because he wanted it on the record. How reasonable he was being. The estate shall request the complete transaction history of card account, ending 0001. It shall deliver that history, with all attachments, to Nora Vasco within 10 business days. Camilla laughed. It was a real laugh, 1 syllable, and it was the only unguarded thing she did all month. That's the line. That's the line you spent a week on. That's the line. Dean was still reading it over. My dear girl, that account has been dead since 2002. Roland has looked at it once a year for 24 years. The way other men visit a grave. There is nothing on it. Then it costs you nothing. It costs me nothing, Camilla agreed, and she took the pen. Sign the waiver. Nora signed the waiver. She signed away $2 million worth of claim, and every future claim, known and unknown, on the estate of Roland Ardley, and she did it in her father's coat, with the sleeve pushed back off her hand. Then Camilla signed the request, and Adele Sturm, downstairs, in a dark green cardigan, put it in the queue like it was anything. It came on the 9th business day, in an envelope with a plastic window, addressed to N. Vasco at the house on Alden Street. Nora opened it standing up in the kitchen and then had to sit down. The history was 4 pages. 3 of them were the card agreement. Page 1 had the account. Opened the 14th of June, 2002. Status: open. Balance: 0. Under a heading that said activity. There were 2 lines, and the rest of the page was white. March 11th, 2003. 2:14 in the morning. Renwick County General Hospital. $4,812.60. Approved. March 11th, 2003. 2:54 in the morning. Reversal by issuer. The same amount. Taken back. Reference. Standing instruction 1140. Nora read those 2 lines 11 times. Her father had used it once. 40 minutes. He had used it at 2:14 in the morning at the hospital, where she now worked nights. And at 2:54, somebody, 300 miles away, had taken it back. She was born at 5:40 that morning. Her mother died at 6:15. The last page was the attachment, and the attachment was what Adele Sturm had said it would be, because that is the rule, and rules do not know who they are helping. Standing Instruction 1140, dated the 14th of June, 2002, the day the account opened. Decline any authorization presented on this account. Do not contact the cardholder. Notify me personally within 24 hours with the merchant name and the vocation. There were initials in the box at the bottom. R.A. Not a signature. Initials in ballpoint, pressed hard enough to emboss the copy. 24 years later, Nora put her hand flat on the table. For 23 years, she had been told a story with a shape to it. A proud son who would not take his father's money. An old man at a window, waiting. The shape was wrong. The card had never been a door. It was a bell, wired to ring in one house. Only. And her father had rung it exactly once in his life, on the worst night of it. Under the instruction, there was one more block of small type, a routing log. It was there because the instructions said, notify. And a bank that says notify has to prove it did. Notice generated, March 11th, 2003, 3:02 in the morning, routed to the Ardley family office. Status, same morning, 7:20. Closed, no action. C. A. 3:02. The notice went out 48 minutes after the reversal. 4 hours and 18 minutes later, somebody at a desk in Cleveland had opened it and closed it. Nora had read 10,000 of these. She knew what a closure code was, and she knew what it cost to make one, which was nothing, which was one click. Loretta came in with the dish towel again, 22 years later, and this time she did not go back to the sink. He didn't ignore my father, Nora said. He was never told. No, you knew that. Loretta sat down across from her. I knew he was never told. I did not know it was a woman at a desk. I always thought it was the old man. So did my father. Yes. Nora's voice did not rise. That's what killed him, not the heart. That. Loretta put both hands flat on the table, and her voice went very level, the way it did when the thing was large. Sit down, sweetheart. There is something I have owed you since you were 4 days old. My husband's name was Ezra Mead. He was a controller at an Ardley plant in Lorraine. And in 2001, he wrote a memo about a vendor that did not exist. Loretta held up one hand. Let me get through it. He wrote the memo, and 11 weeks later, the vendor was his. His signature was on things he never signed. They indicted him in the spring, and he had a stroke in the fall. And he died on a Sunday. And there were 4 people at the funeral. 4. Me, my sister, a man from the union, and a 26-year-old boy from the company, who they had asked to sign a statement about my husband, and who would not do it, and who lost everything the week he refused. Nora did not say anything. That was your father. That is the entire reason I have you. You took me because he wouldn't sign. I took you because he was the only one who didn't, Loretta said. People think that is a kind thing I did. It is not a kind thing. It is arithmetic. He paid for my husband, and I raised his girl, and I would do it again tomorrow. Why didn't you tell me? Because I could not tell you who you were without telling you what they did. And he asked me not to. He came to this kitchen when you were 4, and he said, she gets to grow up without a grudge. That was the whole conversation. She turned the pages around on the table with one finger. He was wrong about one thing. He thought the old man saw the hospital and said no. He didn't see it. No. And your father carried that for 23 years, and it was never even true. Nora drove up to Wickham Ridge that afternoon with 4 pages in a plastic window envelope. Rowan Ardley read them at the long table in the library, with his scarf still on. He read page 1 twice. He did not touch the attachment for a while. Then he put his finger on the initials in the box. That's mine. I know. I wrote that on a Friday. I remember the room. His voice did not go anywhere. I had a lawyer in front of me, and I was very angry. And I said, I want to know where he is. Not, I want to help him. I want to know where he is. And they wrote you a machine that did exactly that. They wrote me exactly what I said. He turned the page over and found the routing log. And he found the closure code. And the initials next to it. He sat very still. C. A. Yes. He looked up. She was at that desk in 2003. She was. So a notice with the name of a hospital in it came into my own house at 3 a.m, he said. And by breakfast, it was closed. And I ate breakfast. You did. Nora did not soften it. That was the closest thing to mercy she had. The rest of it did not need her. A bank that routes a regulatory notice has to keep the closure. A closure without action on a decedent's account is a thing compliance has to look at. Once compliance was looking at the family office in 2003, it was looking at every year since. The vendor that had killed Ezra Mead had never stopped billing. It had simply started billing a foundation instead of a plant. They came for Dean Frayne on a Tuesday at the office, which he had always said was the one place it would never happen. Camilla was served at the house. She asked to change her shoes first, and they let her. Rowan Ardley's lawyers wanted to void the waiver. They said it had been signed under a material misrepresentation, which it had. They said it could be unwound in a morning. Nora said no. Keep it. I signed it, and I read it first, and I'd sign it again. Nora, that is a great deal of money. It is. I want one thing instead, and it's on the books at my job. They met on a Thursday at 10 a.m. at the cashier windows on 1, because that is where the terminal is. Nora had come in on her day off. She was wearing her father's coat. Her supervisor stood at her shoulder with her badge on the right way around. You do not key a payment on an account with your own mother's name on it. Not without somebody watching. Account? Vasco, Marguerite. March 11th, 2003. The supervisor typed it. The screen came back the way those screens do. Write-off. Charity. Closed June 2003. Balance, $4,812.60. That's a write-off, hun. That's been off our books since before you were walking. I know. I'd like to reopen it. The supervisor looked at her for a moment. You've got the permission. I'm asking if you're sure. I'm sure. Nora put in her code, and the account came back to life. 23 years after somebody decided it never would. Then she turned to the old man standing on the public side of the glass, and she pushed the little tray toward him, the way it is pushed toward everybody. $4,812.60. How are we paying? Rowan Ardley's hands were not steady. You got a card out, and it took him 2 tries. The reader took 4 seconds. Then it made the flat, ordinary tone a terminal makes 800 times a day. And the printer under the counter started, and a slip came out with the year 2003 in the middle of it. Nora tore it off and read it and handed it under the glass. Marguerite Vasco. Balance, 0. Paid in full. He held it with both hands. I would have paid it that night. If somebody had walked into my house and said, it is $4,000, and it is your son's wife, I would have paid it that night. I believe you. Then why won't you take anything? Because you'd be paying me, Nora said. And you didn't owe me. You owed her. She's been sitting in a filing cabinet on the 3rd floor for 23 years. And now she isn't. Loretta was in the chairs by the window with her cane across her knees. She had insisted on coming, and she had insisted on standing up for the last part of it. And she did. They walked out through the lobby together, out under the ambulance canopy, where 3 black cars had come up the ramp in march. I keep thinking about how one man wouldn't sign a piece of paper, Loretta said, and how that's the only reason any of us are standing here. No, Nora said. One man wouldn't sign it. But somebody had to keep the paper for 23 years. And that was you. The knee was done in May. Loretta walked to the mailbox on the 4th of July without the cane. There is a video on Nora's phone that is 9 seconds long and mostly sky. Nora kept her job. She is a supervisor now on nights, which means she has the write-off key. The charity applications still come in. She still reads the timestamps first. Roland Ardley comes on Sundays. He sits at the kitchen table on Alden Street and does not look comfortable there. He comes anyway, and Loretta lets him carry things. On the refrigerator, under a magnet from a tire shop, there are 2 pieces of paper. One is a receipt from window 2 with a 0 on it. The other is a photocopy of a birth certificate, folded in 4 along soft lines, turned over to the side with the blue stamp. Nora never got rid of that stamp. She just stopped keeping it in her wallet. The card went into a drawer in 2 halves. Her father had written 6 words on the back of it, and she had done exactly what they said. And that was the last thing he ever asked anybody to do for him. Now let me ask you something. What would you have done, standing on your side of that glass, with a code that could open a 23-year-old account? Tell me down in the comments. I read every one. Rest easy now. There will be another one waiting the next time you come this way.